I watched Olivia's manicured hand tremble as she wrote the check. Her French tips clicked nervously against my marble countertop, the same hands that once gestured mockingly at the water stains on my studio apartment ceiling. "This rent is ridiculous, Sophie," she muttered, not looking me in the eye. "I don't understand how it doubled in just 3 months." I sipped my champagne, savoring its crisp bite. Market fluctuations. You know how real estate is. The golden liquid warmed my throat, expensive and satisfying like the revenge I'd been quietly orchestrating. She didn't recognize me, not really. My hair was different now, sleek and expensively highlighted instead of the drugstore dye job I'd had before. My clothes weren't from clearance racks, but designer boutiques. My posture wasn't hunched with insecurity, but straight-backed with hard-earned confidence. The timid Ellie she'd betrayed had died in a car accident last year. But I remembered everything. The night she laughed at my secondhand furniture while sleeping with James in my bedroom. The morning I found them together, her voice cutting through my shock. Maybe if you weren't always working minimum wage jobs, he wouldn't have gotten bored. The cruel twist of her lips as she said it haunts me still, even in this new life. Olivia slid the check across the counter with a sigh. She still had no idea she was paying rent to the same woman whose life she'd destroyed. That the mysterious property developer everyone in their social circle whispered about was the girl they'd once stepped over on their climb up. "Thanks for letting me stay despite the increase," she said, flashing that familiar fake smile that never reached her eyes. "Not many decent places available in this neighborhood." "No problem," I replied, pocketing her payment with fingers adorned by a subtle but flawless diamond ring. A gift to myself when my first million solidified in my accounts. Everyone deserves a roof over their head, even if they have to pay for it with their soul. My rebirth wasn't metaphorical. One moment I was crying behind the wheel after being evicted, the next I was waking up exactly 1 year earlier with every memory intact. The disorientation had been overwhelming at first. The same cracked ceiling of my studio apartment hovered above me, but the eviction notice that had been taped to my door just hours ago, in my subjective experience, was still months in the future. My phone showed a date from last year. Outside, the trees were green with early summer leaves, not the autumn gold they'd worn when my car slid off the rain-slicked road. I'd spent that first day in a daze, touching familiar objects that I'd already lost once, testing if this was some elaborate hallucination brought on by my dying brain. But the world remained solid, permanent, real. I'd been in a dead-end receptionist job back then. First time around, working for Diana at Meridian Marketing. Diana, with her Ivy League degree and family connections, who'd smelled weakness on me like a shark senses blood. I still remember the exact shade of her lipstick, coral pink that somehow made her teeth look whiter when she smiled. The expensive perfume that announced her presence seconds before she'd appear at my desk. The way she'd drum her fingers impatiently when I took too long to complete a task. "Ellie, could you put together some thoughts on the Westbrook campaign?" She'd asked casually that first time, leaning against my reception desk. "Just bullet points for me to consider." Her tone suggested it was a favor to me, an opportunity she was graciously extending from her position of power. And I, desperate to advance beyond answering phones, had been pathetically grateful. I'd spent the weekend creating a comprehensive strategy, my cheap laptop balanced on my knees because I couldn't afford a desk from my apartment. When Monday came, Diana presented my work to the executives as her own, slide by slide, word for word. I sat in the back of the conference room, bringing coffee and taking notes, watching my ideas being claimed by someone else. I still remember her hand on my shoulder afterward, squeezing just slightly too hard as she steered me back to the reception desk. "Know your place, Ellie. You're a receptionist, not an account manager. I'm helping you by letting you contribute." The ceramic mug in my hand had nearly cracked under my grip, but I'd smiled and nodded, afraid of losing even this job. That was the first time. By the third campaign she'd stolen, I'd finally gathered courage to speak up. I'd rehearsed in my bathroom mirror, practiced my calm, professional tone. "Diana, I'm happy to help with campaigns, but I'd appreciate credit for my contributions." Her response had been swift and merciless. She'd called me delusional, claiming my basic administrative input was being grossly overstated. That's when she fired me for poor performance, ensuring no other agency would touch me. I remembered the shame of cleaning out my desk while coworkers averted their eyes, the panic of calculating how long my savings would last, the indignity of being escorted out by security as though I'd committed a crime instead of requesting recognition. Without a job reference, I ended up waiting tables at a diner where the manager's hands found excuses to brush against my hips, scraping by to afford my tiny studio apartment with its perpetually leaking ceiling and temperamental heating. That's when James entered my life. Handsome, charming James with his cashmere sweaters and easy laugh. James who said he loved that I was authentic and not materialistic like other women. James whose family summered in the Hamptons but who claimed to prefer my lumpy sofa to his penthouse. The heat of shame still burns my neck, remembering how grateful I felt for his attention. How special he made me feel when he chose me over the polished, wealthy women in his social circle. The way I'd spend extra on groceries when he came over, wanting to impress him with my cooking because I couldn't afford to reciprocate the expensive restaurants he took me to. I believed him when he said my struggle was noble, when he praised my work ethic, when he claimed my tiny apartment was cozy and refreshingly unpretentious. Until Olivia. My best friend since college, who'd always had everything come easily, the kind of woman who'd show up to help me move wearing white jeans that somehow stayed pristine, who'd listen to my struggles with performative sympathy while wearing shoes that cost more than my monthly rent. You should stand up for yourself more, Ellie, she'd advise from her position of privilege, where consequences were theoretical rather than catastrophic. You're too nice. That's why people take advantage. We'd met in an art history class where she'd borrowed my notes after missing 3 lectures and still somehow scored higher on the exam. I'd been flattered when she kept calling, including me in brunches and shopping trips where I'd watch her buy things I couldn't afford. There was something addictive about proximity to her effortless success, as though some of it might eventually rub off on me. The betrayal came at my lowest point. After losing my waitressing job when the diner closed unexpectedly, I'd called Olivia crying. She came over with expensive wine and hugged me tightly, her cashmere sweater soft against my cheek. Stay with me tonight, she insisted. You shouldn't be alone. I'd fallen asleep on her couch, exhausted from crying. Woke up at 3 a.m. to noises from her bedroom. The door was cracked open, just enough for me to see James's familiar back, his hands in Olivia's hair. Her apartment is so depressing, I'd heard Olivia whisper between kisses, her voice carrying perfectly in the night quiet. That futon she sleeps on? The ceiling is literally crumbling. It's like she's given up. James had laughed, a sound I'd once loved but that now cut like glass. I was going to end it anyway. She's sweet but going nowhere. I need someone with ambition, you know? I'd grabbed my coat and left silently. Neither called to check on me. 3 days later, I saw Instagram photos of them together at a rooftop bar, her head on his shoulder, sunset reflecting in their glasses of champagne. The caption, "When it just feels right, hash no regrets." 3 days after that, my brother Marcus showed up at my apartment. Our parents had died 2 years earlier in a car accident, much like the one that would eventually claim my first life. They'd left a modest inheritance that would be distributed once Marcus, as executor, settled their affairs. Marcus had always been the successful sibling, the business major while I studied art history, the homeowner while I rented, the one with the real job while I found myself. Our parents had adored him, and I'd accepted his financial guidance without question. "I have bad news, sis," he'd said, his expression grave but eyes never quite meeting mine as he perched awkwardly on my secondhand armchair. "The estate is underwater, medical bills, taxes. There's nothing left. I've been trying to find a way to tell you." I'd accepted this without question. Marcus had always been the responsible one. Why would he lie? I'd offered him tea in my chipped mug and thanked him for handling everything, even as I wondered how I'd make next month's rent. Only after my death did I learn he'd stolen everything, nearly $300,000 that would have saved me from desperation. The money that had mysteriously funded his Aspen vacation home while I spiraled into homelessness. I discovered this during my rebirth year, finding tax documents he'd tried to hide, tracing fund transfers that painted a clear picture of methodical theft. My final indignity came from Claire, my oldest friend from childhood. When I desperately tried launching a small online business selling handmade jewelry, pieces I created at night after sending out dozens of unanswered job applications. I'd reached out to my social circle for support. Claire had initially shared my online store, posted enthusiastic comments about my creativity. But behind my back, she'd told our entire social circle I was having a mental breakdown. "She's not stable," I overheard her telling a mutual friend over coffee at the diner where I'd picked up shifts. All this delusion about starting a business when she can barely pay rent. She needs help, not encouragement. It's kind of sad watching her fall apart like this. My orders dried up overnight. My messages went unanswered. 3 weeks later, crying and driving in the rain after receiving my eviction notice, I hit a guardrail. Pain, then darkness. Then I woke up. 1 year earlier, same body, same life, but with perfect knowledge of what was coming, and a single burning purpose. I'd spent the first day taking inventory of my meager bank account, of the calendar counting down to each betrayal, of the knowledge I now possessed that was worth more than any inheritance. Stock movements I remembered, company failures and successes, market shifts that had seemed random but now formed a clear pattern I could exploit. My phone had buzzed with a text from Diana. "Need you to stay late tonight to prepare for tomorrow's client meeting." I smiled at the screen, my fingertips tingling with anticipation. Game on. "These are excellent ideas, Ellie," Diana said, flipping through my proposal for the Campbell account. Her eyes had that same calculating gleam I now recognized. "Very creative. I'll review them before the meeting tomorrow." The conference room smelled of fresh coffee and Diana's signature perfume, an expensive scent I once coveted but now found cloying. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the dust particles dancing between us. I noticed details I'd missed the first time. How her smile never reached her eyes. How her fingers possessively curled around the edges of my proposal. "Thank you," I replied, my voice neutral despite the déjà vu tightening my chest. This scene had played out before. Diana's false praise, my naive gratitude, the inevitable theft of my work. But this time, the script had changed. "I'm happy to make any revisions you need." She patted my shoulder. "Just the reception desk for now. We all have to pay our dues." Her wedding ring caught the light as she gestured dismissively. I nodded meekly, watching her walk to her office, my proposal clutched possessively in her manicured hand. Last time, I'd cried in the bathroom, mascara streaking down my cheeks as I tried to muffle my sobs. This time, I smiled, because this time, I'd prepared. The email to Diana's boss was already drafted on my personal laptop, containing scans of my original handwritten notes with timestamps that preceded our meeting. I had drafts saved with metadata intact. Most damning of all, a voice recording from my phone that had been sitting in my purse during our conversation, capturing Diana's explicit acknowledgement that these were my ideas she was reviewing. The anticipation of justice almost made me dizzy. I returned to my reception desk, answering calls with a newfound lightness. When Diana stopped by with revision requests, changes designed to justify her claiming ownership, I made them diligently, saving each version with meticulous care. The Campbell account was Meridian's biggest potential client, worth millions in annual billings. The pressure to impress was enormous. I remembered how nervous Diana had been the first time, checking and rechecking every slide before the presentation. Her relief when the client loved the campaign, my campaign, had been palpable. "Just forwarding you what Ellie gave me," Diana told Mr. Westbrook at the client dinner that Friday. The restaurant was dimly lit, candles casting flickering shadows across the white tablecloth. The scent of truffle oil and expensive wine hung in the air. She's got real potential for a receptionist. Mr. Westbrook frowned, setting down his wine glass. His bushy eyebrows furrowed, creating deep valleys on his forehead. "Ellie, your receptionist created this entire campaign?" Diana's smile faltered. A drop of sweat formed at her temple, despite the restaurant's aggressive air conditioning. "Well, she contributed some initial thoughts that I developed." "That's not what your email said," he interrupted, pulling out his phone. His fingers, thick and tanned against the screen, scrolled through messages. "You wrote, and I quote, 'Attaching the brilliant strategy Ellie created for your review. I haven't changed a thing because it's perfect as is.'" The color drained from Diana's face as he continued. "Then you have another email to your boss taking full credit. Would you like me to read that one too?" The silence at the table was delicious. I kept my eyes on my plate, pushing around a piece of expensive salmon I was too excited to eat, appearing shocked along with everyone else at the table. Inside, electricity coursed through my veins. The trap had sprung exactly as planned. I think Meridian should consider who's really driving their creative success, Mr. Westbrook concluded, his voice carrying just enough to ensure neighboring tables could hear. I'd like to work directly with Ellie moving forward. Diana's face contorted with humiliation, a vein pulsing visibly at her temple. Her carefully constructed professional image crumbled before the entire executive team. The power shift was palpable in the air, like the reversal of a magnetic field. My phone rang at 11:42 that night. Diana's name flashed on the screen as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling that no longer leaked thanks to my first strategic stock investments. I let it ring 3 times before answering, savoring each shrill tone. Ellie, thank God you answered. Her voice was ragged, stripped of its usual polish. I could hear ice clinking in a glass in the background. Something horrible happened. Someone set me up, made it look like I stole your work. I injected concern into my voice, the same sympathetic tone she'd used when firing me the first time around. That's terrible. What can I do? Tell them we collaborate, that we're a team, that I mentor you. The desperation in her voice was intoxicating, her words slightly slurred. I pictured her in her pristine apartment, designer outfit replaced by pajamas, perfectly styled hair now disheveled. Please, I'll lose everything. My husband's already talking about divorce if my income changes. Of course I'll help, I soothed, playing with a loose thread on my comforter. What if I tell them I'm not ready for client contact, that I need your guidance? Yes, perfect. Relief flooded her voice, her breathing audibly steadying. You're a lifesaver, Ellie. I knew you were different, not like the others who are always trying to climb over me. Happy to help, I replied, my free hand curling into a fist of triumph. We women need to support each other, right? Her laughter was brittle with relief. Exactly. God, I need to sleep. Thank you, Ellie, truly. See you Monday, I replied sweetly. At Monday's emergency meeting, I did exactly that, making myself appear insecure and underqualified. I stuttered my way through a carefully rehearsed speech about overwhelming client-facing responsibility and needing Diana's mentorship. I even managed to produce tears at the perfect moment, my voice cracking when I mentioned being afraid of disappointing everyone. The result was exactly as I'd calculated. Diana kept her job but was demoted to senior creative advisor, while I was given time to develop away from direct client work. The executives, uncomfortable with my apparent emotional fragility, agreed that this was the best solution for everyone. Diana's relief was pathetically evident. She thanked me profusely in the hallway afterward, promising to be a real mentor moving forward. I accepted her gratitude with downcast eyes, playing the role of naive young woman perfectly. 2 weeks later, armed with evidence of 2 more campaigns Diana had previously stolen from other employees, I met privately with the CEO. This time, I was calm, professional, and articulate. I presented a timeline of systematic intellectual theft that spanned years. Diana was relegated to administrative tasks while I received a junior copywriter position with a salary that allowed me to move to a better apartment. Every morning after that, she silently placed a coffee on my desk, too afraid of my potential complaint to risk my displeasure. The paper cup was always warm against my palm, sweet with the exact amount of cream and sugar I preferred. This small daily submission was perhaps more satisfying than her demotion. I watched her from the corner of my eye as she organized the supply cabinet, her designer clothes gradually replaced by more modest options as her reduced salary took effect. Her husband did indeed file for divorce 3 months later, just as he had in my previous life. The difference was that this time, I watched it happen from a position of rising power rather than from unemployment. My phone buzzed with a text as I contemplated this pleasing reversal of fortune. Ellie, long time no see. Drinks tomorrow, miss your face. James. I felt my heart race despite myself. Even knowing what he would become, that charming smile still affected me. The memory of his touch still lingered on my skin. The genuine happiness I'd felt in the early days of our relationship wasn't entirely false, which made his betrayal all the more painful, but this time I'd be ready. Love to, I texted back, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The new rooftop bar at 8? And setting my phone down, I caught my reflection in the office window. Confident posture, styled hair, designer blazer. A woman with plans, a woman with power. Diana passed by my desk, her shoulders slightly hunched, eyes averted. "Your coffee getting cold?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deliberate sip, maintaining eye contact until she looked away first. "It's perfect," I replied, "just the way I like it." "You look amazing," James said, his eyes appreciatively taking in my black dress, purchased with my new salary. "Success suits you." The rooftop bar sparkled with the city lights below us. I'd chosen it carefully. Exclusive enough to appeal to his status-seeking nature. New enough that he could brag about discovering it. "Thanks," I smiled, performing the shy gratitude he expected. "Just got a promotion." "That's my girl," he grinned, raising his glass. "Always knew you had it in you." I hadn't realized the first time how condescending that sounded. Over the next few weeks, I carefully orchestrated my schedule, ensuring James saw my improved circumstances while maintaining the adoring girlfriend role he craved. I wore designer clothes but acted impressed by his connections. I paid for expensive dinners but made him feel he was guiding my professional growth. Meanwhile, I was laying a trap. My financial advisor mentioned an opportunity. I mentioned casually during dinner. Something about Lakewood Technologies being undervalued? James perked up immediately. "Lakewood? There are rumors of a major acquisition." "Very hush-hush." I widened my eyes. "Really? Should I invest?" "Let me handle it," he offered, exactly as I'd predicted. "I know some people. I could get us both in before it goes public." I transferred him $50,000 the next day, money I'd made through careful investments since my rebirth. Money I could afford to lose, unlike last time. Because Lakewood Technologies wasn't being acquired. They were 3 months from a massive product failure I remembered from my previous life. One that would tank their stock by 78% overnight. I introduced James to Olivia at a charity gala the following week, watching their immediate attraction with calculated indifference. History repeated itself with eerie precision, the lingering touches, the inside jokes, the sudden excuses for why they both couldn't make our planned outings. The night I knew they were together, I shorted Lakewood Technologies with every penny I had. 2 days later, Lakewood's new product line was revealed to have critical security flaws. The stock plummeted. James lost everything, including his job when his firm discovered he'd advised multiple clients to invest heavily based on unfounded acquisition rumors. My phone rang at midnight 1 week later. "Ellie?" James's voice was slurred. "I need help. Everything's gone." "James, what's wrong?" I injected concern into my voice while watching my investment account balance grow by another $1 million. "The Lakewood stock. I put everything in it. Your money too. I'm so sorry." I gasped appropriately. "Everything? How could you?" "Please," he begged. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need somewhere to stay, just for a few days." "What about Olivia?" I asked innocently. "Couldn't you stay with her?" The silence confirmed everything. "How did you—" "Women know, James." I kept my voice gentle, almost sympathetic. "It's fine. These things happen." "She kicked me out when I told her about the money," he admitted. "Please, Ellie. You've always been the nice one. The forgiving one." "Come over tomorrow," I said. "We'll figure something out." I hung up and poured myself another glass of champagne, wondering if he'd noticed my new address was in the city's most exclusive building, the one where I'd been quietly buying up units while establishing myself as the anonymous owner of its property management company. My doorbell rang the next evening, revealing not just James, but Olivia as well. Their eyes widened, taking in my penthouse view. "Ellie," James started, "we didn't realize—" "I've done well," I cut him off with a smile. "Now, what exactly do you need from me?" Before either could answer, my phone rang. My brother's name flashed on the screen. "Ellie? It's Marcus." His voice had that forced cheerfulness I now recognized as manipulation. "How's my favorite sister? We should catch up. Family matters to discuss." Marcus arrived at my penthouse looking exactly the same. Confident smile, expensive watch, and eyes that calculated everyone's value in dollars. "This is Unexpected, he said, glancing around my penthouse. Quite a change from that studio apartment. Life's full of surprises, I replied, watching him catalog my possessions with barely concealed shock. Coffee? When did all this happen? He asked, following me to the kitchen where James and Olivia sat uncomfortably at my island counter. Investments, primarily, I answered truthfully. I've developed a knack for predicting market trends. His eyes lit up exactly as I'd anticipated. Marcus had always been predictable in his greed. That's actually why I wanted to talk, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. I'm having some temporary business challenges. The inheritance money from Mom and Dad is tied up in a project that needs just a bit more capital to pay off big. I tilted my head. Inheritance money? You told me there wasn't any left after their debts. A barely perceptible flinch. Well, a small amount. I've been growing it for both of us. That's what I wanted to discuss. A family investment opportunity. How thoughtful, I replied. Tell me more about this project. For 30 minutes, I listened to his elaborate lies, nodding with apparent interest. The business existed, but what Marcus didn't know was that I'd already met with his partners the previous week. They'd been quite interested to learn about his systematic embezzlement. I'll think about it, I promised as he left, his eyes lingering greedily on my art collection. That night, I finalized the purchase of Marcus's apartment building, along with the ones where James and Olivia lived. 3 signatures, and I owned the roofs over their heads. It wasn't just market knowledge I'd brought back with me. Sometimes I saw flickers of stock prices, business headlines from weeks in the future. At first, I thought they were hallucinations, fragments of my previous life bleeding through. But when each vision proved accurate, I understood. My rebirth came with an edge, a power I'd use to transform myself from destitute receptionist to wealthy investor in just 10 months, operating through shell companies and anonymous investment vehicles. None of them knew that Sophie Laurent, the mysterious property owner they now paid rent to, was the same Ellie they'd discarded. Miss Laurent, my assistant Clara called, the documents are ready. I signed the rent increase notices with a flourish. Each one tripled the current amount, effective in 30 days, the anniversary of my eviction in my previous life. At the bottom of each notice was a handwritten note. No extensions, no exceptions. SL. Then I added the property management office's address, my penthouse, for any questions or concerns. 1 month later, right on schedule, my security desk called up. Miss Laurent, there are 4 people here insisting they need to speak with you. They say it's about their rent increases. I smoothed my silk blouse, glancing at the security feed showing Marcus, James, Olivia, and Diana huddled in my lobby. Send them up, I instructed. All of them. The elevator doors opened and 4 faces froze in confusion. Ellie? Diana stepped forward first. You're Sophie Laurent? Actually, I smiled, it's the other way around. Sophie Laurent is me, but please, come in. I believe you all wanted to discuss your housing situations. This is impossible, Marcus sputtered, pacing my living room. You can't afford all these buildings. You can't be Sophie Laurent. And yet, here we are, I replied, pouring myself a glass of water. I deliberately offered none to them. Is this some kind of revenge? Olivia asked, her voice small. For James? I laughed, the sound echoing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. You think this is about James? Look, Diana stepped forward, always the strategist. Whatever grievance you think you have— I died, I interrupted, my voice calm, in a car accident after being evicted from my apartment. Did any of you know that? Their blank expressions answered for them. No, you wouldn't have, I continued, because none of you checked on me after taking what you needed. I turned to Diana. You stole my work, then fired me when I objected. To James and Olivia, you betrayed me together, mocking my poverty while sleeping in my bed. Finally, to Marcus, and you, my brother, stole my inheritance while I struggled to buy food. That's ridiculous, Marcus scoffed, but his eyes darted nervously. There was no inheritance. And what do you mean you died? You're clearly right here. I came back, I said simply, with knowledge of the future and a chance to rebuild my life, and perfect clarity about who each of you really are. The silence felt like its own presence in the room. Ellie, Olivia finally whispered, tears streaming down her face. I was jealous of you. Even in that tiny apartment, you were creating things, trying to build something meaningful. I've never made anything of value in my life. I made a terrible mistake, James added, stepping toward me. His hand reached for mine, but I moved away. I see who you really are now. Your success, your vision. We could start over. I raised an eyebrow. So I'm worthy of loyalty now that I'm wealthy? Family is forever, Marcus tried next, his voice taking on the sentimental tone he used to manipulate our parents. We've had our differences, but blood bonds us. Mom and Dad would want us to support each other. Don't, I warned, my voice hardening. Don't mention them. Diana, ever practical, tried a different approach. I have connections you could use, Ellie. I was wrong before, but we could be powerful together. A partnership. I looked at each of them, these people who had once been my world. Their faces showed genuine remorse. Not for hurting me, but for losing access to what I now controlled. No, I said simply. No, Diana repeated. No partnerships, no forgiveness, no discounts on your rent. You can't be serious, Marcus exploded. That rent is impossible. I managed with less, I replied. When my car broke down, when I got sick without insurance, when I worked double shifts just to make minimum payments, I survived. We'll have to move, Olivia said, fresh tears starting. Yes, I agreed. To cheaper neighborhoods with longer commutes, where dreams go to die and people judge you for your address. I recommend Westridge Apartments on the south side. It's where I ended up after my eviction. This isn't justice, James argued. It's cruelty. It's business, I corrected him. The market fluctuates. Isn't that what you told your clients who lost everything on your investment advice? I moved to the door, opening it. Your rent is due on the 1st. I don't accept partial payments. One by one they left, shoulders slumped in defeat. When the door closed behind them, I pressed my forehead against its cool surface. The victory felt hollow, an empty space where rage had lived for so long. I'd expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing at all. The Maldives sunset painted the ocean in impossible shades of orange and pink. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in my penthouse, and I'd needed every moment of this solitude to find my center again. More tea, Miss Laurent, the resort attendant asked. Thank you, I smiled, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease as I watched waves lap against white sand. Revenge hadn't brought the peace I'd expected. After the initial satisfaction faded, I was left with the same emptiness, just in more expensive surroundings. The breakthrough came when I received notice that Marcus had fallen behind on rent. My first instinct was triumph, until I realized I'd become what I despised, someone using housing insecurity as a weapon. That night, I established the Second Chance Housing Foundation, transferring ownership of all my buildings and seeding it with $20 million. The foundation provided affordable housing and financial literacy programs with one condition. Residents contributed to community service. I kept tabs on them all, of course. Marcus took a management position at a hardware store, honest work for the first time in his life. His performance reviews showed growing responsibility and unexpected leadership. Diana started over at a small agency, creating campaigns for local businesses. Without shortcuts, her natural creativity finally had room to develop. She volunteered teaching marketing skills at community colleges. James struggled longest, his resume filled with prestigious titles that meant nothing without connections. After 3 humbling months as a rideshare driver, he found work at a financial literacy startup, warning others about investment scams. And Olivia surprised me most. She sold her designer wardrobe to fund baking classes, now running a small but growing cake business from a shared kitchen incubator. Her Instagram showed genuine joy in creating something with her own hands. I denied their rental applications when they eventually sought housing through my foundation. Some boundaries needed to remain. But I made sure other decent, affordable options found their way to them. More sunset watching? A voice asked behind me. I turned to see Michael, the environmental engineer I'd met 3 weeks ago while volunteering with the resort's coral restoration project. Unlike the others from my past, he saw me for who I was now. Neither the desperate Ellie nor the vengeful Sophie, but someone in between and altogether new. Just thinking, I replied, making space for him on my lounge chair. Dangerous pastime, he teased, his eyes crinkling. Back in New York a week later, I stood on my penthouse balcony breathing in the crisp autumn air. Across the street, Olivia served customers at the cafe where she worked between baking commissions. When she glanced up, our eyes met unexpectedly. After a moment's hesitation, I offered a small nod. She returned it, her expression complicated but somehow unburdened. Inside, I closed the leather journal where I documented both lives, the failures of my first chance and the calculated successes of my second. The final entry read simply, "The past is written. The future is mine to create." I placed the journal in my desk drawer and turned toward the sunshine streaming through my windows. For the first time since my rebirth, I had no plans for the day ahead, only possibilities.
Thank you. Original flavor, yes. The original. Get to pick the stickers we want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that it can be personalized to people. That was 10, 11, 12. Bat, booby, uppy. Cute. Was that meow from your side? Oh. There was no one meowed actually here. Was that maybe on your side? Or was it in the song? 15,000 complaints. Not very good. Oh no. Just trying to life. I feel that, Andreas. I feel that hard. Where you say original sounds like my brother always pronouncing vagina. I say the same thing. Vagina. Hurricane Katrina? More like Hurricane Tortilla. Vagina. Oh, God. Or 5 Marcuses. I love the Marcuses. The Marcus stickers. My boy.